The Holy Gospel is written in the 17th chapter of St. Luke, beginning at the 5th verse. The apostle said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your slave who has just come in from plowing or tending sheep in the field, 'Come here at once and take your place at the table'? Would you not rather say to him, 'Prepare supper for me, put on your apron and serve me while I eat and drink, and later you may eat and drink'? Do you thank the slave for doing what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were ordered to do, say, 'We are worthless slaves. We have done only what we ought to have done.'" Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. One of the things when I meet people for the first time is to try and have some questions available that will give me a little bit of insight into them, because I simply do not like to talk just about the weather. I like to talk about something that will kind of give me some kind of insight into the human being that I am now talking to. Very often, in this case it was a couple, one of the questions I ask sometimes to couples is, "How did you meet?" And when I was talking to this particular couple who I hadn't met before, they responded with an interesting story. They said that they had known each other in high school, and they were very attracted to each other, but they never dated. And one of the reasons was the male said he was kind of shy, and this girl was popular, and he was afraid that he would be turned down. He didn't quite know how to approach this new phenomena of dating, and he simply backed off. He tried to be nice to her, he nice to say nice things, and offered once in a while to help her. But it didn't seem like she even knew that he existed. And she said, "Well, I was attracted to him too, but he seemed so shy. He really didn't seem interested in me. And I would do little things that I thought would catch his eye and probably make him ask me out, but he never did." And then we went on to college, and we communicated for some time. And finally, after we graduated from college and came back home, we met actually at church that day, and we started talking, and lo and behold, he asked me out for a date after 10 years. And I said, "Man, what happened? Like, look at those 10 years that you just gave up because you were shy and just didn't assert yourself. Did you ever think how many things in life that aren't a part of you because you were afraid, because you were shy, because you just held back?" Where does shyness or timidity come from? Daniel Coleman in Emotional Intelligence says that at the moment of birth, 20% of people are going to be born naturally shy. Now, I know that sounds crazy. How can shyness be hereditary? But he says that, and he gives a lot of information. He says from the beginning, there are some people that will not like new things. They will not like new places. They are uneasy with strangers, particularly as an infant. They will have faster heartbeats when somebody comes up to them that is unfamiliar. Coleman also says that animals have this tendency, that there are some animals that become naturally shy. And he said some studies have been done with cats. Cats, he said, are shy to about the same degree that humans are. About 15 or 20% are shy right off the beginning. Less curious, avoiding new territories, and actually start to attack smaller rodents than cats that are more self-assured. There's a behavior scientist that has done a study on twins. And one of the important conclusions that came out of that study is that if twins were not identical, the ability to be shy or not shy was different. It was not necessarily consistent. But what they had found in the case of identical twins, time and time again, is they exhibited the same degree of shyness or reticence. So, if you are shy this morning, if there are a lot of things that you don't do because you're just afraid to try new things, or you're uncomfortable with new surroundings, it's not bad. It's all right. And as a matter of fact, the woman has written a book called Quiet, the Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. But there is an interesting message from the Apostle Paul this morning. Because one of the points that he wants to make in his letter to Timothy, who he has sent to the Corinthians in his stead, when they have asked him to come, he sends Timothy in his stead, and Timothy just doesn't seem to be doing the job because he's afraid. He's young. He is not used to facing congregations that sometimes were divided. And he wasn't used to the fact that when he came as a representative of Paul, they were disappointed and say, "Why did you come? We really didn't want you to come. And so why are you here?" Well, Timothy just didn't seem to be doing the job. And Paul writes to him in his letter, and he says, "Do not be ashamed of the testimony of God. For God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and love and self-discipline." A little poke then, saying, "Hey, I sent you to this place. You have a message to talk about, so don't be such a coward." One expert in the study of introverts and shyness says that 40% of human beings are shy enough that it causes them problems in the common tasks of daily living. You want to repeat that? 40% of adults have enough problem with shyness and timidity that it hinders them in their tasks of daily living. Well, where does timidity come from? Well, we said it could be hereditary. But more than likely, it becomes a result of our training, our upbringing, and the community in which we live. Timidity can become overcome when we realize that it's just based on imaginary foundations. We're just afraid sometimes. Some people just fear, and it cripples them up. Sometimes it's from a feeling of inferiority. Other people are better than I am. And especially if we meet with somebody who has a higher station in life, we kind of back off. After all, who would come to the President of the United States and be as bold as they are with friends? Now, you experienced that as children, didn't you? Times when you were asked to do something, but you held back. I remember, I don't know if this is true of all boys, but I remember when I was starting the dating process that I was afraid to ask somebody out. And I had a mother and father that said, why are you afraid? If they say no, you're in no worse place than you were before. So what is there the fear? Well, it's a fear of feeling inferior, of being turned down, of being laughed at, teased, and even, as one of the children mentioned, sometimes bullied. I remember coming back to the mainland here after living in Hawaii for 10 years and going down to the district office and saying that I wanted to restore my connection with the ALC after being gone in Hawaii and being a member of the Episcopal Church. And it was just out of my reasoning ability to think that they would do anything but would receive me with open arms. And they just kind of stonewalled me. And for some time I worked at other churches. I kind of applied for positions, and they got turned down. And this made me a little hesitant to kind of pursue my role with the Lutheran Church. And after I looked at it, and I started in 2002, actually 10 years after I'd come back to Texas, to actually take it in earnest and saying, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. I need to get back into the parish, and then took it seriously and found a fellow pastor who would help me deal with the synod. But I was feeling a lot of feelings of inferiority at that point, and it drove me for 10 years not to be a voice in the pulpit, in a voice preaching the gospel, doing the work that I thought God sent me to do. However, during that period, I learned a lot of new things about people. With jobs, with friendships, we hold back because we're reticent. Because in us there is a little bit of cowardice. But what Paul is speaking to today is there's a cowardice when you are asked to preach the gospel, when you are asked to live the Christian life. Because sometimes we just feel that we're going to be criticized for it, that we're going to be laughed at, particularly in a modern age which doesn't have much tolerance anymore for speaking your faith in public. Shyness might keep us from doing what we're supposed to do. But Paul says, reach out. Paul had sent Timothy to do a job for him. He had been contacted and asked to come back to the church at Corinth. And he said, I'm really busy establishing a new church. I'll send my servant. And when Timothy got there, he was not met with open arms and retreated from preaching the gospel and the message of Timothy, 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy, the letters he received from Paul. Don't be a coward. God gives you the power to become something more than just a coward. Sometimes we're even afraid to show love because it might be misunderstood. I told you last week about a lady that stopped on Saturday night and knocked at the door and wanted permission to sleep here in the car overnight because there was some domestic problem in what she was retreating. And I said, I gave her permission, but I didn't take the time to find out anything about her. She kind of resembled the example we had last week in the illustration of the rich man and Lazarus, where somebody was at your door kind of suffering, and you just kind of closed the door. And I said, well, probably I couldn't have done much anyway. And then on Wednesday, there was a couple of gifts at the front door and a note. And it said, this is the female that stayed in the parking lot. Here are a couple of things I hope you can use. And then she says, I believe in Jesus and have him as my Lord. Thank you for allowing me to stay in the parking lot. Now I feel even worse. Because obviously in that case I really had the opportunity to do something powerful, and I let it slide because I was simply afraid, a little bit of a coward, but blamed it on the fact that I had to sleep and get enough sleep so I could preach to you about love the following morning. I bring that up simply because it's so easy to let people pass by and not to do our job in terms of reaching out, extending a hand, going the extra mile, and proclaiming the gospel in word and deed. It is not only Timothy who needs the admonition. Do not be ashamed, for God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and love and self-discipline. All you have to do is use it. Amen. Pulpit hymn, O Jesus.